Hey guys, Andy here. I want to talk to you about the good old days. I remember growing up, things were a whole lot different than they are now. Kids nowadays are spoiled. I probably didn't even have an Atari till I was 10, 12 years old. I remember I traded something with a friend. He had this motorcycle game. It had handlebars built onto the box, where all the electronics were inside, and it had handlebars built onto it, and it drove 3 times across the television screen, and at the end there was a ramp and school buses, and each time you made it over the ramp, and you couldn't jump too far off the ramp or you'd crash, and obviously you couldn't crash on the buses, but each time you would go across the screen the 3 times, once across the top, across the middle, and at the bottom, then the buses were lined up at the end. And I mean, that was the video games back then, and we weren't allowed to play video games much each day. My parents were like, get outside and do something. That's where I spent a lot of my time, in the woods. I spent weeks in the summer. Me and my buddy Jamie, we would take the wheelbarrow and turn it around backwards and take the handles and set them up on the fenders of the lawn tractor. We'd take the mower deck off all by ourselves. I mean, I grew up, working on a farm from the time I was 12. We had a cow, or a couple cows, a horse, and a few pigs on our farm at home, but I grew up working on a neighbor's farm from the time I was 12, doing hay, repairing fences and stuff in the wintertime. Actually, I remember this one stubborn cow that had her calf out in snowbank and went up to my knees in the river chasing this cow, trying to get her into the barn, freezing my butt off, but I did what I had to do, and that's just the way things were back then. Kids nowadays have it, they're spoiled. I remember having to go out and shovel the driveway. My sisters had to wash the dishes and help keep the house clean and stuff like that, and I had to do the things outside. Shoveling the driveway in the wintertime. If it got really bad, sure, my parents and other family members come out and help shovel. I remember we lived on a 1-mile dirt road. It went to a T on both ends. It was only like 4 houses on the road, maybe 1, 2, 4. And it got more houses over the years, but I remember one time we were snowed in for a week or so. And my sister had this little Ford Fiesta, just a little car. And we were tired of being snowed in, and we shoveled the road, the width of the car, 1/3 of a mile. All of us kids shoveled that road so we could get out and go to the movies. And that's just what you did back then, Kids nowadays have things too easy. I remember growing up with my dad, hunting and fishing. We had beagles, and of course it was my job to feed the dogs and water the dogs, and we had them in a pen, all fenced in, and we'd take them beagles out and hunt rabbit. And I mean, if we didn't do that, we probably wouldn't have eat. My dad was the only one that worked until, my mom was probably 35 or so. No, she was older than that, probably closer to 40. But, we wouldn't have eaten. I mean, we would have starved because we had to fish, and hunt for food. I've eaten many, many rabbits, and I can clean a rabbit in probably 5 minutes, and, gut fish, quite a few in an hour. But I remember fishing with my dad. We'd go out and hunt night crawlers at night, out there with a flashlight, picking them up around the yard. Me, my dad, my mom, my sisters, out there with coffee cans, collecting up night crawlers to go fishing. And we'd water the lawn down in the evening just to go out and pick up the night crawlers at night so we could go fishing over the weekend. And we did good fishing back then. I mean, we had this kind of a metal net mesh basket that we put off the side of the boat when we were fishing. But I remember having to take the battery out of the car, put it in the boat to use for the trolling motor when we weren't rowing, and, get back to the car at the end of the day, have to put the battery back in the car to start the car to go home. And, I remember times we had fish, so many fish, that we put them in a 5-gallon bucket. They couldn't swim upright. The fish were sideways because they were stacked in the bucket so deep. And that's just how it was, But if we didn't do that, we wouldn't have ate as well as we did as kids growing up. I remember helping my parents build our garage, 24 by 36 foot pole barn garage, and we spent probably 2 years pouring the cement in the garage, pouring the rat wall around the outside so that animals and rodents couldn't tunnel underneath the cement and hollow it out, pouring the cement in front of the garage. It's just, kids don't go through that nowadays. They don't have to work that hard. They sit in the house on their butt all day playing video games, and, if they don't get what they want for Christmas, they're pissed off. If they don't get the things they want during the summer or every weekend or whatever, they're mad. And it's just, we had to work for those things when I was a kid. That's part of the problem with society today. I remember having to change the transmission. I was probably 16, 17. I had to change the transmission in my dad's truck. He paid me $50 for it, and I changed the transmission in his truck, and I got it all put in there, and I said, Dad, you need to check the tranny fluid before you try and drive it. And I went to town to spend my $50. And I come back, my dad's like, oh, that transmission's no good. He's like, you're going to have to put the other one in that's in the garage. I know that one's good. And I started pulling the transmission out again for the second time in one day. And I just about got the transmission down on the ground, and I went in and I asked my dad, I said, Dad, did you check that tranny fluid before you tried to move the truck? He's like, no, it should have had enough in it to move. Well, you live and learn. I probably should have checked it myself. I get the transmission down, get it down on the ground, and of course you got to pull the dipstick tube out of the tranny to pull it out of the truck. And when I slid the transmission out from under the truck, I looked in the dipstick hole. There was not a drop of tranny fluid in there, whatever. Bone dry. So I go back in and tell my dad, and he's like, just go ahead and put the other one in. The one that's in the garage, put it in there. I know that one's good. So that's what I did. I put the second transmission in the truck and, got my dad back on the road so he could go to work. But, that was how it was back then. We couldn't afford to have a mechanic work on the car. We couldn't afford to call somebody in to work on the house. We couldn't afford to have somebody build our garage. We did it all ourselves. I remember there was a tree that kind of leaned over the house. And I remember having to go up. I climbed probably 30, 35 feet up in the air, up in this tree, tying myself off to the tree with a rope, and trimming the tree limbs off this tree for my parents because they were worried about it falling on the house, which their bedroom was right there. But I remember having to climb up there and trim that tree off so they would rent my tux to go to the prom. And that's what I had to do to earn that, Kids nowadays, they expect those things. But no, not back then. Back then you had to earn for what you got, you had to work for it. I remember one time my parents, I don't know why we called him my uncle, but he was my cousin. But my parents borrowed the truck from him to take some stuff to the dump. And my cousin says, hey, I'll loan you my truck, but I got a broken headlight. You buy me a new headlight and change the headlight and you can borrow my truck. And my dad changed the headlight. I was probably, I couldn't have been about 6 or 7. And my younger sister and I were playing, chasing each other, whatever. And I climbed up in the back of the truck. And I forget if I was probably chasing her, but I forget. Well, I climbed up in the back of the truck and I went around the box. And when I went to jump out, there was a trash bag there, and that broken headlight just happened to be in that trash bag. And let me see if you can see that there. There's a scar right there where that broken headlight cut me all the way to the bone. And I squeezed it together and I went running in the house. Tell my mom, she's like, oh, it's just a scratch. Well, when I let go of it, she was screaming my dad's name because she could see the bone in my leg. But, that's just how it was growing up. My dad wrapped it up, took the doctor a good 45 minutes to unwrap my leg because my dad wrapped it up so good. But, that just goes back to show, that's how it was back then. You didn't pay somebody to borrow their stuff, you made trade. You know, everybody didn't have money back then. You know, it was tight for us, it was tight for everybody. You know, I mean, I remember my parents having a garden. I mean, huge garden. And my mom canning vegetables, you know, helping pick, water the garden, helping pick the vegetables, you know, bring them in, help wash, help peel, you know, helping her canning things. Us kids, to make money on the weekends, we grew extra cucumbers. And my sisters there was what do they call that? A carpool area over on the main highway. And my parents would take us over there and drop us off. And since I was so good with math, I did all the money. And they'd drop us off over there with half a truckload of cucumbers. And my sisters would stand out there with 2 cucumbers in each hand. And we had signs down the road, you know, 2 cucumbers, 2 for a quarter. And we sold cucumbers all weekend long. That's where we got our money to go to the movies, to go to the skating rink. You know, it's just, things need to be a little more like they used to be. People are too spoiled nowadays, you know, with all the video games and stuff like that. You know, I remember hunting for food, you know. Hunting for rabbit, hunting for deer. I mean, I remember the first time I got a deer, I hit it with a car. And I had to go to work. So, well, actually the first deer I had to go to work and I couldn't gut it, but my dad was going to be home in like a half hour. But the second deer I got with the same car, I ended up calling into work. It was like the day before Thanksgiving. Yeah, maybe not. It was getting close there anyway. But I hit the deer and I called the police and they said, well, if you want the deer, go back and get it. And I said, okay. So I drove the car back down there. We threw the deer on the hood of the car, drove it back home, strung this deer up in the garage. The officer came and gave me a permit to keep the deer. And it was my first time gutting a deer. So I put a 5-gallon bucket under the deer with a plastic bag inside, you know, for the guts, and started gutting that deer out. And sure enough, filled the whole bucket, guts all over the floor, you know, and I had to clean that up. But, you know, that was that's how it was when I grew up. You know, you did what you had to do, and, you know, you did what you had to do to survive and have food. Our garden was huge. I mean, probably close to 1/4 of an acre. And if we didn't, you know, can foods and do things like that, we wouldn't have ate as well as we did growing up. You know, like I said, my mom didn't work until she was in her mid to late 30s. So, I mean, I remember our sofa in the living room. My parents got the sofa used somewhere, and the legs were broke off. So my dad built a frame, wooden frame, and we had the sofa sitting on the frame, and we'd take the sofa off the frame and stack canned goods all underneath in the sofa for the wintertime. I remember in, I believe it was 1978, I think it was. We got snowed in, and we were snowed in tight for a month. And if we didn't have those canned foods under the sofa, we probably wouldn't have ate as well as we did. You know, and you just had to prepare back then. You didn't have, you know, food banks that you could go to and get free food, and, you know, you had family members. You know, you depended on your family, and you worked together. And people just don't work together nowadays. You know, I think that's a big problem with society today. It's just people don't work together. And that's one big reason why I do what I do on YouTube, is to pass along this information, because families don't talk and teach each other like they used to. And if I can teach people things off my channel and learn things by watching other people's channels, that's what I want to do. So just wanted to make this video because, you know, I miss the good old days. I miss raking the lawn and burning the leaves and, you know, spending time with family. Because I don't have much family left anymore. And, you know, I miss those days. I really do. So I guess I just wanted to make this video and put that out there. You know, just to get you guys thinking. You know, appreciate the family you have. Teach them what you know. Work together, you know. Teach your kids respect nowadays. Because most kids nowadays don't have the respect that we had to have when we grew up. You can't even whip your kids no more. You can't even spank them or anything, or they're going to go to school and tell their teacher, and next thing you know, you're going to lose your kids for punishing them. I remember being whipped with Hot Wheels tracks and wire fly swatters, and but I grew up all right. I don't have no scars on my body from being punished, and I don't know. It just gets me thinking sometimes. Kids need to be punished. They need to be held accountable, and you just can't do that no more. And I think that's a big problem with today's society. The kids are spoiled. So just kind of wanted to get this out there, tell you about my good old days and get you guys thinking.